how about now? Can you all hear me now? Yeah? All right. You say we right here. Well, good to see y'all. Good to see y'all. Good to see y'all. We don't need a whole lot. We don't need a whole lot. We only just need maybe about 2 or 3. That's what the Bible says. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I'm there in the midst. Well, it's the New Year's Eve, and I know that many of us are probably looking forward to embarking on this new year. But I tell you what, I am too. But my advice to you, my encouragement to you, is to make sure that we make it a year that we're actually going to strengthen our relationship with God. All right? I mean, I know a lot of people are making resolutions, but please make that the top of your list, just to strengthen your relationship with God and to make sure that you are able to contribute to the work of the kingdom. That's what we're all here for. Romans chapter 15. We're still studying Romans chapter 15. Where are we at? Anybody know? No, we're at 306 Church Street. But that was just a trick question. That was a trick question. Where did we leave off last week? Who remember? Okay, verse 19. Y'all all right? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I'm just happy that y'all remember that. So, as always, who wants to let us know what it is that they got from the lesson? Well, what have you gotten so far? And actually, you could just even let us know what you've gotten from the book of Romans so far. Go ahead, Sister Sutton. Who got the mic for her? Yeah. So, I think they got a mic right there. They're all sitting in a little cohesive unit over here. They're just going to.
In verse 19.
Yeah, you gotta hold it up. There you go.
In verse 19,
Mm-hmm.
it said, through mighty signs and wonders by the power of the Spirit of God, so that from Jerusalem and round about unto Illyricum, I have fully preached the gospel of Christ, with through the mighty power of the Holy Spirit, Paul was enabled to work among the Gentiles, mighty signs and works, and he also preached the gospel, and he also, the Gentiles were his works, his fruits.
Okay. All righty. Thank you for that comment. Good job. Anybody else? Go ahead, brother.
Well, for me, verse 20. Yeah, I think it was verse 20 that put the icing on the cake for me during last Wednesday Bible study. Paul said, so have I strived to preach the gospel, not what Christ was named, lest I should build upon another man's gospel. So for me, what I got out of it is, so many times we preach and teach and have whole studies within ourselves. But Paul is saying, look, I reached out to those who have not heard the gospel. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's one of the things that it is my intention to try to do more of this time. Mm-hmm. Is to go somewhere where nobody specifically knows me, that I can teach them something about the gospel that they haven't heard before. Mm-hmm. Because even when we go from congregation to congregation, somebody else has already laid that foundation. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge for me this time of the year to try to start a foundation where nobody has started. Not necessarily a congregation, but at least a message.
Right. And so, but Paul here was actually, and that's good. What you done, for those of you, I know we didn't really do verse 20, but he did verse 20 on his own in his studies. But he is absolutely right. So we don't probably even have to go all over verse 20, because what Paul is actually saying there is the same thing. Like what I did, I made sure I visited towns and I visited cities where no one else had preached the gospel. And so we know that the gospel was first preached to the Gentiles by Peter. He actually preached the gospel to Cornelius and his family. Remember that? Okay, so now that we know that the gospel was preached to the Gentiles by Peter, and that again was fulfillment of, prophecy there, that it was by his mouth that it was actually going to happen. And so he did that. And now Paul is saying, well, remember, he's the apostle to the Gentiles. So all of these areas that he's going, Paul said, I went to places where no one else had already preached the gospel. Do not forget, on the day of Pentecost, Acts chapter 2, Jews had returned to Jerusalem from other cities. And so what happened is that after the Pentecost, many of those people returned back to their cities. So some of them returned back and started teaching and preaching, there in their cities. That, and one of the things that you'll actually see is that, as you continue reading, even in the book of Acts, you will actually see that. Remember the persecution that arose? Acts chapter 8. Remember that persecution that arose after Stephen was killed? What happened? They had to scatter from Jerusalem. And so again, the gospel spread that way. But Paul is actually saying, so when I came to some places, if they hadn't really heard about Christ here, that was perfect. This is the place that I needed to be. This is the place that I needed to start my work. All right? So yes, what Brother Frank did was actually brought that even on a more personalized basis. Like what he would love to do is not necessarily go and start a congregation, but you can actually go ahead and reach out to someone and say, I'll plant the seed in this heart. And we can actually do that, right? Go ahead, take her that. Go ahead, sis.
And sometimes, Brother Morris, that is a very good thing to do, to reach out to individuals where they don't know anything about either religion or anything about the gospel, because it's much more easier to speak with that individual opposed to those that's been rooted and grounded in denomination and in different ways and in their way of thinking, etc.
And absolutely. And one of the perfect example we have of that was that Jesus actually went, and who was his biggest opposition? People who knew what the law said. People who knew what the law said. So the resistance that he faced was really from the Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees, and those folks, right? It wasn't really from the common folk. It wasn't from them, because they accused him of actually, you messing up with the sinners over there, the publicans and the sinners and everybody else. You hanging around those people. What are you doing? But just like Sister Ellaby was saying, sometimes you're just going to have to find yourself there with them, because the ones, what Jesus's statement that really fixed that problem was really those that are whole. Those that are whole, they don't need a physician. Those who are sick, they're the ones that need a physician. The ones who are broken. And so where are you going to really find them sometimes? They're going to be the ones that society forgets. Right? So we got to look. We got to look everywhere for them. Okay, so we got that. So we're gonna read from verse 20, and we're going to read on. Can we take it in some? Oh, go ahead. Give her the mic. He has the mic. She wants to hit 17. So if somebody is 16 or 18, get out of the way, because she's going to hit 17. Yeah.
Verse 17, when I was reading and studying it, it was, it says, so I have reason to be enthusiastic about all Christ Jesus has done through me in my service to God. Okay, in my search when I was reading, and I seen a summary of it, and to explain it, it was stated that all Paul's efforts and his accomplishments are all rooted in his devotion to Christ. And it said that Paul's sole purpose and his source of pride stem from his relationship with Christ and his call from God.
Yeah. Paul did say, for me to live is what?
To live is Christ. Yeah.
For me to live is Christ, to die is gain, right? That's what, that's what he said. So everything that you're saying, and Paul let it be known And just a few weeks ago, when I actually, that lesson, Paul said that I have done it all, Timothy, and I can sum it up in this one verse. I have fought the good fight. You know, I have finished my course or the race, and I have kept the faith. And so Paul said that I did not deviate from the mission that I was given. Regardless of the setbacks, the circumstances that happened along the way, I did not deviate from it. And that could be hard for some of us because, yes, you know, you may be met with a lot of resistance. You may be met with a whole lot of whatever it is that comes. But just know that God has not given up on you. And if you're still able to complain about it, it's because God has been so gracious to sustain you so that you can complain about it. That's why he was trying to tell Paul, don't complain because my grace is sufficient for you. And we could take a page out of that book, not complaining, but finding a reason to thank God. Thank him anyway, right? What it says, like, in every situation that we find ourselves, we have to do a give, and we have to give thanks. So let's look at verse 20. Let's go to verse 20 then, and we can actually, not verse 20, but Frank did that already. So we're gonna go on to verse 21. Verse 21. And verse 21 to verse 24. We're gonna try to do that, and then see if we could do it like that in those little stuff. Verse 21 to verse 24. So what it says.
But as it is written, they shall see to whom no tidings of him came, and they who have not heard shall understand.
All right, verse 22.
Wherefore also I was hindered these many times from coming to you.
Verse 23.
But now having no more place in these parts, and having a great desire these many years to come unto you.
All right, 24.
Whensoever I go unto Spain, for I hope to see you in my journey, and to be brought on my way thitherward by you, if first in some measure I shall have been satisfied with your company.
All right. So again, remember we talked about this before now. Paul here in chapter 15, Paul kept on making references to Old Testament scriptures, right? From the very beginning, we saw that he was doing that, making a lot of references. So now in 21, he makes another one, but as it is written. You know how many times he done told them that? As it is written, as it is written. So you know that it's not really me saying it, but again, it is written. What is written? To whom he was not announced, they shall see. Again, piggybacking off the previous verse. These people had not yet been exposed to the gospel. And so now he's actually taken to the gospel to people who are ignorant of the gospel. Not ignorant in the sense that you're saying that they're stupid or anything like that, but ignorant in the sense that they are lacking that knowledge of who Jesus Christ is. And that's kind of what Sister Ellaby was saying earlier, is that sometimes you're going to have to take the gospel. You find it a lot easier when you take the gospel to those who have not yet heard. And then you can actually go ahead and that would be like the ideal soil that you actually need to actually plant the seed. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, Paul said that, right? They had not announced, and those who have not heard shall understand. And you find that where? Isaiah what? All righty, Isaiah 52 and 15. So you all got that already. All them good reference Bibles that you all got. See that? Now, he said that, now this is important here. Verse 22. Now, Paul, now this is interesting. Look at what Paul said. For this reason, I have also been much hindered from coming to you. Better yet, who want to take up that? I'm not sure how much, but who want to take that up? Go ahead.
It's kind of reference to what you and Brother Thompson were saying about how they were going to many different places and teaching them many things, and it gave them kind of like a reason why it took him so long to respond back, because basically he was busy. He was doing that. So if you're like busy doing the Lord's work and stuff, in many ways it will kind of stop you in your tracks from knowing that. So pretty much you had a good cause. It was like, oh, I was lazy or I just forgot. It was like I was actually out there doing things to where, it slowed me down. So it was,
You know what? Try to tie it with try to package 21, not 21, but 22, 23. Okay, it's going to be hard to do, so let me try and do it. Let me try and help you out a little bit. The parallel passage to this right here, because Paul was in the Paul was in the vicinity of Corinth when he actually wrote this letter. Right? So he was in the vicinity of Corinth, and it would have been easier for Paul to actually say, "Let me go ahead, because I have been longing to come to Rome." And again, I was telling you about the map, and I wish I had brought my. I should have forwarded the PowerPoint stuff that has the map on here, and then you would have actually seen what we're talking about here. So Paul was actually in Corinth, and now he could have went a couple hundred miles to Rome. It was only about 800 miles from Corinth to Rome. If Paul really wanted, Paul could have said, like, I'm actually going to go ahead and deliver this letter, right? But Paul didn't do that. Paul did something else. Look at what Paul told them that he had. So Paul said, for a long time, I've been wanting to come to Rome. I've really been wanting to come to Rome for a long time now. Remember again now, Paul had been on missionary journeys before, traveling around. So Jerusalem was already on the Roman rule. So it's not like Paul did not have. Is this out? Oh, yeah. He died a long time. Need to have a funeral for him. I think there's some batteries in there, so. Yeah. So Paul could have done that, right? We talk about delivered that letter himself. But Paul, being a servant of Christ and actually putting the needs of the saints first. Is that what we're told to do? We put the needs of the saints first, right? So Paul said, I have been longing to see you. That's his personal desire. Let's get this in perspective. My personal desire has been to come and see you. However, there is something else that supersedes my personal desire. And what is that? Look in the next verse. Look in the next verse. Because this is Paul's reason why he couldn't go to Rome, even though he had been longing to see the Romans for a long time. I heard about all the good things that's been going on over there in Rome. A good report. The church is doing well over there. Jews and Gentiles are together in the same congregation. And you may have a couple of differences, but actually for the most part, you're pretty much doing well. And people have spoken highly of you. And that is commendable. And I'm writing these things to you so that I can actually, give you more grounding, more edification to help you build your faith. That's why I'm spending all this time and making sure that the letter to you, Romans, is so detailed. All right? And look at why he couldn't go to Rome. What was the reason? It's in the next verse, 23. No, I'm sorry. That's the finishing to that one. But look, whenever I do what? Where am I at? No, sorry. It's actually down further. It's down further. Because that's why I was saying take 22 to 24 as one packet, okay? And that's really what it was. So 22 to 24 was him actually talking about his desire to come to see them and talking about how he had already finished the work in other places. There was nothing more for me to do in these parts. I've already done that. I did not build on another man's foundation, but I did a lot of work, covered a lot of grounds. but I couldn't come to see you. So why couldn't he come to see him? Verse 25. Who got verse 25? Verse 25 is going to show you.
But before I come, I must go to Jerusalem to take a gift to the believers there.
Go ahead, verse 26.
For you see, the believers in Macedonia and Achaia have eagerly taken up an offering for the poor among the believers in Jerusalem.
Ooh. All right. So this is what we were talking about. Paul said, I have a personal desire to come to see you. That's my personal thing. But my personal desire cannot supersede the broader mission of the church. And what is the broader mission of the church? To minister to the saints, to help those who are in need. So Paul said, like, you know what? I have, you remember now on Sunday mornings, we read in 1 Corinthians 16 and verse 1 and 2, right? But that's not just where it started. So here it is that Paul is actually saying, I collected a gift, a generous gift. A generous gift from who? Gentiles. Gentiles are contributing. Gentiles are giving to who? To assist who? It was not the greedy, but it was the needy. It was for the needy. Here is another thing. Church, how do you think the people in the region that Paul is actually preaching knew about the people in Jerusalem who were poor? Okay, word of mouth, right? But do you think the poor saints in Jerusalem were like, our business is all over the street, everybody now know that we poor? They accepted it. They accepted it. And they welcomed the fact that other Christians knew about their plight. And now that they knew about their plight, these people had an obligation. And I want you all to, these are words that they should just come like, wait a minute, look at what the saints were doing. It was an obligation for me to help my less fortunate brother and sister. Talk about us today. That's one of the reasons I say all the time. When we actually, if you as a believer today read the account of the early church with a subjective mind and not an objective mind, man, I tell you what, you'll be convicting yourself so much.
And you know what, Brother Morris? They did not refuse that gift because it came from the Gentiles. They accepted that gift.
They accepted it. They accepted it. So I want you to look at something now. So Paul says, my planning and everything is all strategic. See, sometimes we may want to put our personal thing above the kingdom's mission. We could have probably said, like, man, I'm going on that vacation. But Paul says, yeah, I'm going to Spain. And I want to come to see you. I plan on going to Spain later on to preach the gospel. I really want to come see you. But guess what? I'm here. Look, that's what I'm saying. You got to look on the map. Here it is that Rome is over here, right? Corinth is here. Rome is over here in Italy. Corinth is right here in Greece. And Paul said, now I got to go here. So Paul said, I can't come see you. I'm going this way first to go deliver that gift. And whenever I come, and whenever I'm finished delivering that gift, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to come back to see you. And he's not coming back just to visit. He's not just coming back to fellowship. You see, because sometimes we look at that verse and then we miss the big thing that Paul said. Look at something else in that verse that Paul said. Paul said that when I come back, you owe me something too. And what is it that they owed Paul? Assistance for his journey. Y'all see that? Paul said, I'm going to Spain, but I'm going to Spain to go spread the gospel. I'm not going to Spain on a vacation. I'm going to Spain to spread the gospel. And since it is the kingdom's mission for me to go spread the gospel, I'm expecting that you can support me in my effort to spread the gospel. Again, like I said, if you read this with that, listen, there are some things that happen in this particular passage right here that churches of Christ today, for the most part, don't practice. Yes, we may want to help one another in times of disaster. That's fine. We may want to help one another in times of disaster. But some of the more prosperous churches or more prosperous congregations would sit by and watch a poorer congregation die on the vine and will not help them financially. Because everybody says, they look at the autonomy of the congregations. Because you are autonomous, you should be self-sufficient. The reality is, you may not be. The gospel may be important in this small city for you to actually preach the gospel here in this small town. And true enough, that it may not be producing a lot of fruits right now. But just because it's not producing a lot of fruit may not mean that the gospel mission need to be abandoned. And so you have in the Church of Christ, like a lot of larger congregation will not take a smaller congregation under its wings and say, like, we will help them to support the effort. For example, man, I tell you what, before they try to label Brother Morris a false whatever, but whatever I say, I could back it up. Have you ever heard that congregations receive letters of request from other congregations? Sometimes they're not answered. Our congregation here, sometimes we receive requests from somebody who may be going to Bible school. And they say, like, well, I need financial support. And we'll say, okay, we'll try and help them as much as we can. But you know what? There are other congregations that would turn that down. And why would they turn it down? Because he or she is not a member of this congregation. Do you think those in Rome could have probably said, Paul, you're not a member of this congregation. So you wanting to go to Spain to go spread the gospel? Now you better get them people in Jerusalem, the congregation that you and Barnabas came out of, the congregation that you and Barnabas were selected from, that you and Silas were selected from. Y'all need to go over there and ask them to help support that mission. But Paul said, no, the spread of the gospel is the collective mission of the church, the collective body. Spreading the gospel is the church's responsibility. It's not just a one congregation responsibility. But until we come together to accept that truth, accept that reality, we're always going to be in the predicament that we're in. We will see small congregations die on the vine. I know. Some people are like, Brother Morris, I'm not there yet. Look at something that Solomon tells us in Proverbs 16 and verse 9. Proverbs 16 and verse 9. I'm sure Paul probably had this in the back of his mind as he was writing this. What does it say? Proverbs 16 and 9. A man's heart does what? A man's heart plans his way, but who directs the steps?
But the Lord directs his steps.
The Lord directs his steps. So Paul had a plan, but Paul says, hold on a minute. My plan cannot precede God's guidance. Anybody ever tried to go anywhere with their kids? Remember when your kids were small? And your kids just know, all right, and they take off in front of you? And sometimes you be like, hold on a minute, hold on. You got to walk with me here. You got to walk with me. And so Paul is like, I want to run off to Spain, but you know what? I want to run off there. I want to run to Rome, sorry. I'm supposed to be going to Spain, but I want to run off to Rome too and see you on the way. But if it is the Lord's will that I come there, then I will come there. All right? So all that I'm telling you right now, if you really want to see the account of all of this as it happens, let's go to the parallel passage in all of this, and you can actually see this. So let's go to Acts chapter 20. Acts chapter 20. So all the things right here in Acts 20, that's one of the good things about having like a chronological Bible, because then you would actually see, how it actually fits in. So Romans chapter 15 here, the whole book of Romans, really and truly, Paul wrote it right in this passage right here in Acts chapter 20. This was where he wrote it. And did Paul ever make it to Rome? He sure did. But you know what? He never made it to Rome the way he thought that he was going to make it to Rome. So that's why sometimes you can say like, it probably was not meant to be that way. And that's one of the reasons Paul said, I'll wait. I'll allow God to do it. However God does it, I'll let him do it. But we know that Paul actually went to Rome, but he went to Rome as a prisoner. He never got to fulfill that wish that he actually thought. But he went to Rome. And then when he went to Rome, guess what he was able to do? He was still able to preach the gospel. He was able to preach the gospel there in Rome. So Acts chapter 20. Let's look at a couple of things here in Acts chapter 20. So when you look in chapter 1, verse 1 to verse 3 in Acts chapter 20, where he says, after the uproar ceased, Paul having sent for the disciples and exhorted them, he took leave from them and departed to go where? He went into Macedonia. Look at verse 2. And when he had gone through those parts and had given them much exhortation, he came where? Guess where Corinth is? Greece. And so Corinth actually is the capital city of Greece at the time. And now he's actually here, and he actually he spent some time there in Greece. And as he is there, he wrote the book of Romans. Right? He wrote the book of Romans. And so look at verse 3. Look at verse 3. And when he had spent how many months? 3 months there. Then the Jews did whatever they wanted to do. And he did what? He set sail for Syria. So Paul said, I'm going for more. That's why I wish I had actually brought the map. And then he determined to return through Macedonia. But Paul, as you continue reading, then you see now Paul is actually there from verse 3 onwards. You can see that he's actually there now. He's in the company of some of the people there from the church. And actually, he's actually talking to them about some things.